One of the early comments that I made with a girl I was dating probably about 2 years ago that had such a profound implication on her perceived level of attractiveness to myself. Like this was like nothing else I had ever experienced. It was like from cold to hot, quicker than a set of traffic lights. Maybe that isn't the best example. Was I just don't think that we are sexually compatible. And I didn't even do this intentionally. I was courting the woman at the time. And this was, again, somebody who I would have offered exclusivity to. But that comment was true. It was very, very true because I felt that we aligned on so much on our values. I remember the first time that she invited me around her house. She cooked me like 3 steaks. And she's very, very health conscious, more conservative leaning. You get the type. So our values and morals and ideas about the world, very spiritually inclined as well, were very, very solid. I'd just come out of a very, very long-term relationship at that time. But one of the things that was really troubling me was sexual incompatibility and maybe intimacy as well. And I remember I said this phrase, and as I prefaced, I wasn't thinking too much about it. And I recall within a day, there was such a profound change in her willingness to, let's say, be compatible, not combative. I'm going to try and keep this, PG and not be very, very crass here. But I got, again, a distinct and stark difference in terms of her willingness to show affection, intimacy, and sexual relationships. And I'd probably been seeing her for about 3 weeks at the time. And I was thinking to myself, because I did notice, I was really trying to understand this particular experience and example in my life and how I could convey it to yourself to integrate into increasing your level of perceived attractiveness with some of the women that perhaps you are courting or want to be your girlfriend or want to be your wife. And one of the theories that I think it is most congruent with, and I don't like this theory particularly, is this concept called dread game. Now, dread game is, the title is how its theory, I suppose, is described, is this idea that women, from the time that they go through puberty and start to experience sexual relationships, it's one-way traffic. They don't really need to do very much at all. If you're a woman living in the modern world, you've got guys slinging dick at you from left, right, and center. And it must get a little bit tiring. In my mind, I'd find it, these are dicks, I'd find it exhausting, very, very exhausting. So the idea of having novel chase and a challenge, I imagine, is very, very intoxicating. It doesn't make sense. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was trying to convey to you. If you're a woman and a man says to you that he is unsure or reluctant or, again, not quite convinced that you're sexually compatible, when is the first time a woman has heard that? It's a very, very strange phenomenon. If you kind of reverse the roles and the man's kind of starting to pull away and going, I'm not particularly sure of this. Therefore, I need to change the way that I'm approaching this. And there's a perceived level of attractiveness because it's novel. It's very, very unique. It's very, very interesting. It's very, very mysterious. And I was thinking about things that I've done perhaps more intentionally since I've understood this, that equally have increased the perceived levels of attractiveness and increased congruence to your needs, be it affection, be it intimacy, be it sexual relationships, in the women that you wish to see that kind of behavior from. And the idea is that you do want to be direct. You want to convey in the woman that you're courting that you want her, but you certainly don't need her. And that's a very, very important point that you gentlemen have to become very, very proficient in. Even if there is a element of, trickery or being slightly you're shielding your intentions in a way. It is a little bit of a game. You don't have to be conventionally. I wouldn't say you're lying. Perhaps you're just not being as forthcoming as the nice guys are, and that's why I perceive why they have the reputation that they do is they're too honest, they're too forthcoming, they're boring, they're very, very boring, they're very, very compliant. You don't want to be compliant, you don't want to be content with a mediocre relationship, because I could have been content, but that was one of the misalignments in what would have been, a very, very happy and reciprocal, compassionate, and and loving relationship. Fundamentally, there has to be an element of you keeping control and you keeping frame. And what I wanted to enter into this conversation was this notion of masculine gene expression. By the way, the book is pretty much complete. Pre-orders you can use in the link below. I'm going to have it out before Christmas. Haven't quite figured out a date yet, but thank you for being patient with myself. And this is the precursor into this particular conversation and dialogue here, because what this beautiful, majestic, generous, divine hormone does is it fundamentally changes your temperament. And when your temperament has been changed in relation to a courting process, you begin to do these things naturally. You begin to become more competitive. You begin to become less content with mediocrity, and you start to chase the things that are consistent and congruent with this very masculine and competitive endocrinology that you have set yourself in. And I wasn't like this before. I certainly wasn't like this before. I was, again, very, very compliant. I was a pushover, and as soon as the female counterpart would sense that thing, that you're kind of this dog on a leash and she can pull you right and she can pull you left, you've already lost the game. The moment she realizes that you derive your validation from her, sorry, your days are numbered. You could be in a relationship now and you might feel that way. I promise you it's not going to work out the way that you would like it to be. There needs to be an element of drama. And I know that maybe sounds perhaps immoral or less honest, but I am beginning to think more and more as I dive into the subject that perhaps, the Disney approach to relationships, of course, aren't consistent and realistic with real life. There has to be an element of play. There has to be an element of whimsy. There has to be the prospect of potential loss for there to be potential gain. Like, think about that. Risk is kind of a tax you pay to progress in life, in every single facet of your life, including relationships. You have to be willing to forego immediate gratifications in your relationship in order to have the kind of intimacy that you fundamentally need, or to meet your needs. And perhaps I'm speaking a little bit off center here, but I'm trying to be a little bit more transparent and forthcoming about the dynamics of female nature that are just a fundamental fact. They're an axiomatic truth of how these things work. You will notice that your attraction is directly correlated to your ability to be polarizing. You don't want her to figure you out so soon. And I was going to mention some practical things that you can include in your courting process to do this, to make her feel that, again, you want her, but you don't necessarily need her. And this is, you are always the instigator of attraction. You have to go into a social context, the conversation, I'm trying to be very eloquent here, a social conversation with your intentions. Maybe you meet somebody, maybe you stop somebody on the street and say, hello, I'm so sorry, but I've had a crush on you for the last 5 seconds, and I had to know your name. You have to make your intentions very, very clear. And that's kind of like a clever little playful way that you can do that without becoming, I suppose, too strong. Maybe you say after that, I have somewhere to be. I'm late for a very important meeting, or I'm late to meet with friends, but I would be really annoyed with myself if I didn't get your number. And that's a really interesting way to package asking for somebody's contact information, because you've stopped somebody. Because the idea I think most men are scared about is coming across too strong when you're building initial rapport. So immediately you've kind of prefaced or made a caveat in the conversation that your time is already limited. You have somewhere else to be that is far more important, but you couldn't pass up the opportunity to have this initial social interaction with her. You've made her you've packaged the interaction which has romantic overtones, and you're asking for contact information. And then maybe in there, I think what would be really important is to romanticize the idea of you meeting together, which is essentially talking about a potential future event with overtones of whimsy, sexual tension, etc., etc. So it might look like, do you eat food? And that's a really interesting question, because of course everybody eats food, but it's kind of childish. It's kind of playful. It's got sprinklings of whimsy. Maybe you say, "Do you eat food?" She says, "Well, yes, I eat food." "Do you drink drinks?" He goes, "Well, yeah, yes, I drink drinks." Maybe we could eat food and drink drinks close together. Again, you kind of want to be playful, light-hearted, and nonchalant and detached is a good word that you can use to describe how you should color your conversations. In the past, again, I think, and I've done this, and I've only learned this very recently, and I'm going to be 30 next year, is perhaps I've been very, very too direct and stoic and less playful. You have to build an element of comfort, an element of fun fundamentally around this. And notice how you're not setting up something in stone here. It's just an idea. It's just a prospect. Maybe you can start to add again those romanticizing elements about what she likes to eat. Maybe you can joke about her being a vegan. I'll take you to a vegan place, and you can munch on some carrot sticks or something like that, and I'll get a real meal. You're just building play. You're building comfort there. Perhaps you get the contact information, and you need to be the first one to leave the interaction. And again, this is so unconventional. It's so unique compared to perhaps an individual who goes with more. You're not showing all your cards. Comparatively to how I used to be was, we should get dinner together. Let's get dinner on this day. Are you free? The perception is everything in this regard, but the perception between those two kind of arrangements is, one is conveying very, very high value. You're in demand. Your time is valuable. You already have social commitments. People value your company. You can't give this person all of your time, energy, and currency because you've been pre-booked. You are conveying romantic overtones by suggesting that this could be a potential in the future, and then this is the fun part. Her imagination does all the work after that. Maybe you don't even contact her for a couple of days, a week, and she's going crazy. He got my number, he got my details. She's been thinking about the very short but fun, creative, whimsical interaction that you had that was sexually charged, had romantic overtones, and also portrayed you in a way that was very, very high value. So in a not too dissimilar way from the accidental comment that I made with that woman I was courting a couple of years ago, it was that. And I actually remember distinctly after that interaction, there was a kind of, let's describe it as a cool-off period where we weren't interacting as frequently as we were before. And then her imagination does all the work. She's probably thinking, this person isn't interested in me. He said we're sexually non-compatible. Does that mean he's got more compatibility with somebody else? I'm not being disingenuous with this kind of information here, but there is a weakness in giving too much information away. There is a weakness in there. It doesn't convey value. It doesn't convey strength. You want to come across as mysterious. You want to be the anomaly in the equation. As soon as she figures you out by you you giving too much, you already lose the game. There is a game, there is a dance to this, there is a whimsy to this. It's supposed to be fun. You know, what's really interesting, an interesting thing I read, I think it was on X, is this idea, oh, I'm going to lose it now, is this idea that, I've got it, you want to kind of amuse yourself. You want to kind of amuse yourself. It's a really interesting way to think about your interactions in a different light, because so much of the onus of myself before has been, I want to make this person feel good. You kind of, as soon as you kind of switch the interaction to what would be most fun for me, that's when things start working in your favor. That's where you get the control. Even the conversations that you start. Talk about, like a lot of guys have anxiety. What shall I talk about? Shall I start talking about, you know, her work or how her day is going? I couldn't find anything more boring than asking somebody that I didn't know how their day is going. Like break usual convention. Do things that are not typical. You don't want to be boring in that way. Break the pattern. As soon as you start breaking the pattern and you are perceived to be unpredictable, that's where you start to build attraction, as long as it is charged with sexual intimacy or romantic overtones. So I hope, you know, this video was valuable. Gentlemen, again, masculine gene expression, title of my new book, out very, very soon. It is the endocrinology, it is the health to the temperament that I'm trying to convey in this video. And you can find it in the link below. Facts, not theories. Speak soon.